Chapter 41. Escape the Island. The Isle of Sacrifice was next and was unlike anything they had encountered before. It loomed before them as a desolate and unforgiving wasteland, where the sky hung low, gray, and featureless, as though the heavens themselves had abandoned it. The ground was cracked and jagged, shifting beneath their feet like a living thing that resented their presence. In the center of it all, stretching endlessly in every direction, lay the labyrinth of offering, its walls towering and gleaming like black glass, sharp edges catching what little light existed. As soon as they stepped forward, the change hit them all at once. A suffocating weight pressed against them, their limbs suddenly sluggish, their senses dulled. The avatars, beings who had wielded elemental forces, who had walked among the heavens and commanded storms, now felt no different than mortals. Their divine essence was stripped away. Starchild gasped, his radiant aura flickering and vanishing completely. Janaeus let out a deep growl, attempting to ignite a flame in his mouth. Nothing. Bethara clenched his fists in frustration, feeling the absence of his connection to the beasts of the land. Feric, however, merely closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. Unlike the others, he did not panic. He welcomed the sensation, the fragility of being mortal. "So this is what they feel," he muttered under his breath. A strange sense of understanding washing over him. Bethara looked at Kaelion with wide eyes. "Are you okay?" Kaelion clenched his fists. "I feel powerless." "Welcome to the labyrinth of offering," a voice echoed. A massive stone guardian, hollow-eyed and etched with ancient runes, stood at the entrance to the labyrinth. "Inside, you will face trials not of strength or power, but of endurance, resolve, and pain. There is no magic to save you. There is no divine hand to intervene. One must be left behind, or none shall leave at all." The moment they entered, the air turned frigid. The walls were impossibly high, shifting and reconfiguring with each step they took. Sharp, jagged paths forced them to squeeze through narrow corridors, while gaping chasms appeared without warning beneath their feet. The deeper they ventured, the more the labyrinth seemed to breathe. A living, pulsing thing designed to ensnare them forever. Then came the horrors. Shadows slithered across the walls, taking the form of figures from their pasts, accusing voices, regretful faces, lost loves, fallen friends. Kaelion saw his mother reaching for him. Bethara heard the cries of the people she had abandoned. Janaeus beheld the first terrified humans he had once tormented. The shadows whispered their worst fears, clung to their limbs like thick tar, slowing them down, dragging them into despair. But it wasn't just illusions. The labyrinth physically fought back. Doors sealed behind them. Pathways led to dead ends. And the very ground crumbled beneath them, became razor-sharp spikes erupting from the floors. And giant stone constructs rose from the ground, faceless but relentless, hunting them at every turn. "This place is trying to break us," Starchild growled, wiping sweat from his brow. "It won't," Feric said, his determination unshaken. "We just keep moving." The deeper they ventured into the labyrinth, the more it seemed to react to them. The walls pulsed, shifting like living veins, closing in at times only to expand unexpectedly, leading them down new and unfamiliar paths. Then, without warning, the ground beneath Bethara gave way. She barely had time to scream before she was sucked downward into a pit of black quicksand, its surface shimmering with a strange, oily sheen. The more she struggled, the faster she sank. "Bethara!" Kaelion rushed to the edge, reaching for her. I can't move," she gasped, panic flashing across her face as the thick sludge reached her shoulders. Janaeus snarled, his massive dragon-like muscles flexing as he slammed his claws into the ground, attempting to pull her free. But as soon as his talons touched the sand, they began to sink as well. "This is no ordinary pit," Starchild murmured, his eyes scanning the scene. "It feeds on desperation." Feric's expression hardened. He knelt at the edge and stopped moving, his breathing slowing. "Bethara, stop struggling," he instructed. "What? Are you insane? I'm sinking." "Trust me." His voice was calm, steady. "Let go. Don't fight it." With great hesitation, Bethara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She stopped thrashing. The moment she did, the quicksand ceased pulling her down. Instead, it lifted her slightly, as if sensing its prey was no longer fighting back. In that moment, Feric reached in, grabbed her arm, and yanked her free. Bethara panted, lying on the ground as Kaelion helped her up. "That was the worst thing I've ever felt," she muttered, shuddering. "Like I was being consumed by hatred and fear." "Not the worst yet," Janaeus growled, pointing ahead. A new horror awaited. A sudden turn in the maze led them into a circular chamber filled with towering mirrors stretching from floor to ceiling. Each one was warped, twisting their reflections into grotesque mockeries of themselves. "This feels wrong," Starchild muttered. As soon as he stepped forward, the mirrors shifted, and then he saw her. A woman, beautiful beyond words, standing in the glass, reaching for him. She was familiar, too familiar. One of the many who had once worshipped him, devoted themselves to him, one of the many he had left behind. "Stay," she whispered. More women appeared, dozens, then hundreds, their hands pressing against the glass, their eyes pleading. "You are our world," they cried in unison, "and yet you left us." Starchild's breath hitched. He knew it was an illusion, yet he couldn't look away. His mind spiraled. Had he truly abandoned them? Had he used them only to satisfy his own emptiness? The reflections shimmered, their hands reaching, pulling him toward the glass. He took a step forward. "No!" Kaelion grabbed him by the shoulder and shoved him back. The moment Starchild's foot left the floor, the mirror shattered, sending shards flying. "That's not real," Kaelion said, firmly shaking him. Starchild swallowed hard, blinking rapidly as the illusions faded. I know," he said weakly. Bethara placed a hand on his arm. "Come on, Starchild, let's finish this." With a slow nod, Starchild followed, but the haunted look in his eyes did not fade. They were close to the exit now. The air had grown heavy, thick with an unnatural energy. The final path led into an open courtyard within the labyrinth, a space seemingly untouched by time, but they were not alone. From the shadows of the towering walls, creatures emerged, black eyeless things, their bodies shifting like liquid yet moving with unnatural speed. Their limbs were jagged, clawed, and hungry. "Shadow beasts," Janaeus snarled. One leaped at them. Kaelion barely dodged in time, rolling beneath its massive claws before slamming his fist into its torso. Without his powers, he expected his blow to do little, but the beast howled, stumbling back. "They're weak to physical force," he shouted. Bethara didn't wait for confirmation. She lunged forward, her sword flashing, cutting deep into the nearest beast's throat. A burst of dark mist erupted as it collapsed. Feric, unarmed, relied on his speed, dodging between strikes, finding openings to trip or disorient them. Janaeus, even without his fire, used brute force, grabbing one by its throat and slamming it into the wall until it stopped moving. Zephi screeched above, using its talons to claw at the creatures' backs. The battle was chaotic, relentless, and exhausting. Without their powers, they had to rely on sheer will. By the end of it, the ground was littered with the dissolving remains of the creatures. "We made it," Bethara gasped, her chest heaving. "No," Feric said, his voice grim. He pointed ahead. The exit was in sight, a massive stone door shimmering faintly, signaling freedom. They approached cautiously, but the moment they reached it, an invisible force stopped them cold. Bethara slammed her fist against the air. "What is this?" Kaelion's eyes widened in realization. "The Guardian's words. One must stay behind." Silence fell over them like a death sentence. A heavy silence fell over them. No one spoke, but they all felt the same question in the air. Who would stay? Bethara stepped forward, his expression calm. "I will." Feric's head snapped up. No, we'll find another way." Bethara placed a hand on his shoulder. "There is no other way, brother." He looked around at them all. "I have lived for eons, and I have dedicated myself to the creatures of this world. But my time has come. Feric, you have earned your place among the beasts. You are more than worthy to guide them when I am gone." "No," Feric whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm not ready for this." "You are," Bethara smiled. "I have always admired you, Feric. You never sought power, never claimed greatness, and yet You are loved by man and beast alike. That is true strength." Feric's hands trembled as he clenched them into fists. "I won't leave you behind." "You must." Bethara turned to the others. "Go now before this place takes us all." Bethara grabbed Kaelion's hand. "We have to go," she whispered. Kaelion hesitated, but in his heart he knew Bethara was right. They had no choice. One by one they stepped through the stone door. As it sealed shut behind them, the last thing they saw was Bethara standing tall, unafraid, accepting his fate. And then he was gone. Payment had been made. They had escaped the islands. Chapter 42. The Price of Passage. The silence was deafening. Even as their powers surged back into them, coursing like rivers of light and fire through their veins, none of them could rejoice. Their bodies were whole again, divine and untouchable, returned to their rightful godhood. But they had left something behind. Someone. Bethara was gone. Feric stood at the edge of the path, staring at the place where the door had sealed shut. He could still feel Bethara's presence lingering there, as if the echoes of his voice had yet to fade. The words of farewell, the weight of his sacrifice, pressed against Feric's chest like a stone too heavy to bear. It should have been me. The thought clawed at his mind. It should have been me. Bethara placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch light but firm. "Feric." He didn't turn. "I don't deserve this." No one spoke. The avatars had never truly known what it meant to lose one of their own. They were eternal beings, woven from the very fabric of existence itself. The idea that one of them could be gone forever was unfathomable. Yet, here they stood, diminished. Kaelion finally broke the silence. "We keep moving." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the storm raging within. "We owe it to Bethara to finish this." Feric clenched his fists. "I don't belong here." Starchild exhaled slowly. "You do." "No, I don't." Feric turned sharply, his eyes wild with pain. Bethara was the king of beasts, the one truly connected to nature. He was meant to be the one to lead them. He understood them in ways I never could. And now he's gone. He swallowed hard. "Because of me." Janaeus, who had remained uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "No, Feric, because he chose. We are gods, but that doesn't mean we decide everything. Bethara made his choice, and you disgrace his memory by thinking he chose wrong." Feric's breath hitched. He wanted to argue, to scream, to run. But Janaeus' words struck deep. He looked down at his hands that had never felt worthy, hands that had always been just a step behind the others. And yet, Bethara had believed in him. Bethara had given his life because he believed Feric was ready to take on the responsibility. Slowly, painfully, Feric nodded. "We move forward," he whispered. Bethara squeezed his shoulder one last time before stepping away. The avatars turned, their gazes lifting toward the horizon, where the final leg of their journey awaited. The landscape ahead was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was the land of Nerathar, home of Blackwell's malevolent order. The sky, once a shifting mix of divine blues and star-speckled blacks, had darkened into something unnatural. It wasn't the absence of light, but the absence of existence itself. A void so vast it seemed to devour all color, all warmth, all life. Blackwell's dwelling stood at the heart of it, a towering citadel of twisted obsidian. Its jagged spires clawed at the heavens like the talons of some ancient beast. It pulsed with a sickly glow as if the very walls were alive, breathing, shifting. Screams, not loud, but faint, like whispers on the wind, emanated from within. Rivers of liquid darkness snaked around the stronghold, moving unnaturally as if they were sentient. At times, the rivers rose, forming the grotesque silhouettes of creatures long forgotten, their mouths open in silent, eternal wails. The land around the citadel was barren but not dead. Strange twisted figures roamed the outskirts, their movements jerky, unnatural. Once they might have been men. They were something else. Blackwell's influence had turned them into hollowed-out husk shells of what they once were. "Nerethar," Starchild murmured. His usual warmth was gone, replaced by something colder, harder. Janaea scowled, a fitting home for a traitor. Kaelion clenched his jaw. "Blackwell knows we're coming." Bethara exhaled, gripping the hilt of her sword. "Then let's make sure he regrets it." As they took their first steps toward the final battle, the ground trembled, as if the world itself was warning them. They did not stop. They did not hesitate. Because this was the end. Chapter 43. Wave of Destruction. The air in Blackwell's chamber was thick with the scent of burning flesh and something sinister, decay, and ancient power intertwined. The Dark Lord sat on his throne of black stone as he listened to the nervous pacing of Vincentius. His second-in-command, once regal in stature, now trembled with the anticipation of the coming battle. He was a ball of restless energy, his long fingers tapping anxiously against the hilt of his dagger. "They are coming," Vincentius muttered, glancing toward the massive obsidian doors that led to the outer chamber. "I can feel them. Inching closer." Blackwell, ever calm, ever unreadable, simply watched him with a detached amusement. "Of course they are. It is what they were always meant to do." His voice was smooth, velvety, yet dripping with venom. "Let them come." Vincentius whirled on him, eyes wide. "We should strike first. Annihilate them before they get too close." Blackwell tilted his head slightly. "And expend our energy needlessly? No, Vincentius. I have waited too long for this. You will take the horde, all of them. The creatures of the night, the horrors from within the dark realm, every monstrosity that slithers and crawls beneath our feet. You will send them forth and drown the avatars in an endless wave of destruction. They will be too occupied to reach me. I also have one last surprise for them," Blackwell said eerily. Blackwell's eyes narrowed as he felt the shifting energies pulse through him. He had anticipated this moment, but even he was unprepared for the sheer magnitude of the power he was about to unleash. With slow, deliberate movements, he raised his arms, his fingers curling like talons as he began to chant in a language so ancient it had been lost to time itself. The air crackled, warping around his form as his body contorted unnaturally, writhing as if something inside him was struggling to escape. His voice deepened, layered with echoes of 1,000 whispers, a terrible hymn of darkness, reverberating through the stone halls of his fortress. Vincentius, standing a few paces behind him, instinctively reached for his blade, his mind screaming at him to strike now, while the Dark Lord was vulnerable. But something rooted him in place. Perhaps it was fear, perhaps it was something darker. Admiration. He had never witnessed such raw, untamed power. Outside, the sky blackened as an eerie, unnatural glow spread across the land. It was not light, not in the traditional sense, but a darkness so deep it swallowed everything in its wake. The ground trembled. And then it began. Hands, twisted and skeletal, burst from the scorched earth. Corpses, long since forgotten, clawed their way from their graves, their hollow eyes alight with spectral fire. The battlefield itself became a graveyard reborn. Warriors from ages past, innocents who had perished in war, even creatures that had been slain over centuries, all twisted into new, horrifying forms. An army of the dead, countless and relentless, rose in unison, bound by Blackwell's will, their moans filling the air like a chorus of despair. The avatars and their mortal allies had faced many horrors, but never had they witnessed anything like this. The war had just changed. This was no longer a battle for victory, this was survival against death itself. Vincentius took a step back, his usually confident smirk replaced with something far more unsettling, unease. His fingers twitched over the hilt of his swords, but he did not draw them. Instead, he let out a low breath, his voice filled with a mix of awe and barely concealed resentment. "You never cease to astonish, brother," Vincentius said, as he took in the endless sea of undead rising before them, an army of the damned. "You truly have no limits, do you?" He chuckled, though it lacked his usual bravado. "I must admit, even I did not expect this. But tell me, Blackwell, are you certain you still command them? Or have you simply unleashed something even you cannot control?" His words dripped with both admiration and veiled challenge, his mind already scheming. If Blackwell had overstepped, if this power consumed him, there would be an opportunity. One Vincentius had been waiting for. "And what of the boy?" Vincentius hissed. A slow smile crept across Blackwell's face. "The boy is mine." Vincentius hesitated, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. Then, bowing low, he turned and left the chamber, his cloak billowing behind him. Blackwell exhaled slowly, resting his fingers against the arm of his throne. Soon, it would all be over. The wind howled as the party stood at the final precipice before Blackwell's domain. The air itself seemed heavier here, as if resisting their every step forward. The dark fortress loomed in the distance, a sprawling nightmare of jagged spires and shifting shadows, its towers seeming to move when one wasn't looking. From the high ground where they stood, with Zephy flying overhead, Kaelion, Bethara, Feric, Janius, and the Star Child could see the incoming horror. A tide of darkness. Kaelion's stomach tightened as he beheld the endless tide of darkness rolling toward them, a writhing mass of shadows and death. The very air trembled with their approach. His grip tightened around his blade as he exhaled sharply. The ground quivered as an endless army of nightmarish creatures surged forward. Winged beasts with skeletal faces shrieked from the sky, their hollow eyes filled with malice. On the ground, an amalgamation of monstrous horrors, creatures stitched together from the corpses of the forgotten, hulking brutes with jagged teeth. Slithering forms that twisted unnaturally rushed toward them in a tide of pure malevolence. It was an army the likes of which had never been seen before. Bethara swallowed hard. "How can we possibly battle all of them?" "We can't," Feric admitted, his voice grim. "That's why we won't." Bethara frowned, but Feric turned to Kaelion, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "I will take Kay around them. We'll slip through their ranks and get to Blackwell. If we cut off the head, the rest will fall apart." Janius grinned, cracking his knuckles as flames danced in his eyes. "And we'll hold the line." The Star Child nodded, his expression unreadable but determined. "We faced worse." Bethara's heart pounded. She knew what was coming. "Bethara," Feric turned to her, his eyes pleading, "you need you to hide. You cannot do any good in this battle." "No," Feric sighed. "Bethara, listen to me." "No," she snapped, stepping forward. "Don't you remember? It isn't always about strength and muscle. I won the contest on the island. I defeated all of you." Her eyes locked on to Kaelion's, filled with something fierce and unwavering. "Kay needs me, and I won't leave him." Feric clenched his jaw. He knew by now there was no arguing with Bethara. He sighed. "Then stay close. If anything happens, run." Bethara smirked. "Not a chance." The moment was shattered by a distant roar. It had begun. Chapter 44. The Final Battle. The battlefield trembled beneath their feet as the horde of nightmares charged forward, clawed creatures of the night, screeching wraiths, and the rotting dead, all drawn by Blackwell's dark summons. The sky itself seemed to weep shadows as Vincentius led the charge, his twin blades gleaming with an unholy light. His sharp eyes caught sight of the boy slipping away from the battle, Feric and the girl at his side. Vincentius smirked, whispering to himself, "Perfect, just like we wanted. Everything goes according to plan." The Star Child stood at the front, arms crossed, smirking despite the tidal wave of horror surging toward them. "I see that you're free, Vincentius," he called out over the roaring chaos. "But you were never a team player. How does it feel to be taking orders from someone else?" Beside him, Janaeus let out a low chuckle, his massive dragon form shifting slightly, talons digging into the earth. "Come to think of it," he added, voice like distant thunder, "you were never any good solo either, always doing more than you needed just to get by. If you had just followed the rest of us, you could have been great." Vincentius froze in his charge, his golden eyes flashing with raw fury. "Follow you?" His voice was venom, his hands tightening around his blades until his knuckles turned white. "Vincentius is no follower. You both were all flash and no substance. What I wanted to accomplish was something great, because I am great." His body shook with rage. "You two are nothing compared to my skills." As Vincentius's rage reached its peak, the golden ankh etched into his forehead began to glow with an eerie brilliance. At first, it was a soft shimmer, like the last light of a dying sun, but as his fury burned hotter, so did the sacred symbol. It pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, casting sharp golden rays across the battlefield, illuminating his sharp, angular features with an almost divine intensity. The glow intensified, crackling with raw energy, tendrils of golden fire spiraling outward like living veins of power. His eyes burned with the same molten hue, locked onto the Star Child and Janaeus with an unyielding glare. Every time his blade struck, the ankh flared brighter, sending shockwaves through the air, as if the mark itself was feeding off his unrelenting wrath. The once symbolic relic now surged with something ancient, something dangerous power, untapped, waiting to be unleashed. With a sharp motion, he raised his hand, signaling his monstrous legions forward. "End them!" The battle erupted in a violent explosion of light, steel, and raw energy. The Star Child moved like a comet, his golden form a beacon of celestial energy amidst the sea of darkness. With a sweep of his hand, radiant waves of love and light surged forth, disintegrating dozens of the undead where they stood. He twirled through the air, his presence intoxicating, mesmerizing even the most savage of creatures for a brief moment before he struck them down. Janaeus, in his dragon form, took to the sky, his massive wings blotting out what little moonlight remained. He unleashed torrents of blue fire, incinerating the creatures of the night with each exhale. His talons tore through the corpses of fallen warriors now puppeted by Blackwell's magic, sending their broken forms crashing into the battlefield below. Vincentius, however, was unrelenting. He moved with unnatural speed. His power was different. It was not chaotic like Blackwell's, nor divine like these avatars. It was cold, sharp, calculated. The Star Child and Vincentius clashed, their blades meeting in a blinding explosion of energy. Star Child grinned. "Still compensating, I see." Vincentius snarled, driving his knee into the Star Child's stomach before slashing at his side. "Still joking while bleeding out, I see." Janaeus swooped down, his massive jaws snapping at Vincentius, but the rogue avatar flipped backward, avoiding the bite by mere inches. He landed with perfect grace, spinning to face Janaeus. "And you," he sneered, "for all your might, you're still just a brute." Fire and rage. "No control," Janaeus responded with a deafening roar, sending a pulse of concussive force that shattered the undead warriors around them. Vincentius wasted no time. He signaled once more, and the ground trembled as even more monstrosities spilled onto the battlefield, giants of shadow, wraiths with burning red eyes, spectral knights clad in decayed armor. The Star Child and Janaeus exchanged a glance. The odds were overwhelming. Still they smiled. "Shall we?" the Star Child asked, twirling his blade. "Let's put another log on this fire and watch it all burn down," Janaeus replied, his wings flaring wide. And the battle raged on. The fortress of Blackwell loomed before them like a nightmare-given form. The air was thick, heavy with an unnatural stillness, as if the very land was holding its breath. There were no guards, no creatures lurking in the shadows, no monsters waiting to strike. And that was what unsettled them most of all. Kaelion tightened his grip on his sword, his every instinct screaming that this was wrong. "Why is it so? Empty?" he whispered, his voice barely above the howl of the wind. Bethara glanced around warily, her hand resting on the hilt of her dagger. "He's letting us in." Feric swallowed hard. "That means he's waiting for us." They pressed forward, stepping through the colossal black iron doors that groaned open as if the fortress itself welcomed them. The moment they crossed the threshold, a suffocating darkness wrapped around them. The torches lining the walls flickered with a sickly blue flame, casting unnatural shadows that seemed to stretch and shift as if alive. The throne room lay ahead, a vast towering chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. At the center, atop a raised dais, sat a throne of twisted black stone, and on that throne, draped in his flowing robes, was Blackwell. He was waiting. "Greeting, young hero," Blackwell said smoothly, his voice carrying an amused lilt. "I've been waiting a long time for you." Kaelion stopped just before the steps leading to the throne, his fingers twitching over the hilt of his sword. The presence of the fallen avatar of Shadow was suffocating, his very being radiating a power unlike anything Kaelion had faced before. Feric, his heart heavy with old wounds, took a hesitant step forward. "Blackwell, it doesn't have to be this way. You can still—" Before he could finish, Blackwell flicked his wrist. A wave of dark energy exploded from his palm, striking Feric square in the chest. Feric flew backward with a cry, slamming into the stone wall with a sickening crack. He collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath. "Quiet," Blackwell snapped, rising from his throne. His crimson eyes gleamed with disgust. "You were always the weakest among us, Feric, always craving the acceptance of man after our fathers cast us aside." He sneered. "Pathetic." Kaelion's vision blurred with fury. "No." He rushed to Feric's side, dropping to his knees. He shook him, his voice cracking. "Feric, please get up." "I need you." Feric's breathing was shallow, his body barely responding. His eyes fluttered open, a faint, weary smile on his lips. "No, Kay," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You are the light. You are the way. Believe in yourself." Kaelion shook his head violently. "No, Feric, don't leave me. I need you." Bethara stood frozen, her entire body trembling. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks as she watched Feric grow still, his warmth fading. She clenched her fists so tightly her nails bit into her skin. Then, with a scream of pure rage, she grabbed her sword and hurled it straight at Blackwell's chest. The blade never met its mark. Blackwell lifted a single hand, and the sword froze midair before shattering into dust. He chuckled darkly. "Ah, it looks like the little princess has more fight in her than the Elder's champion. What a shame." The battlefield was a living nightmare. The creatures of the night swarmed like a tidal wave of pure darkness, their forms shifting, writhing, some with razor-sharp limbs, others with soulless eyes that gleamed with hunger. The army of the dead moved methodically, their lifeless husks marching in perfect unison, the clatter of rusted armor and brittle bone echoing over the battlefield like a funeral dirge. The Star-Child and Janaeus fought with every ounce of their godlike might, but even they were being driven to their limits. Janaeus' dragon form was bloodied and torn, his once mighty wings now barely able to keep him aloft as he exhaled a torrent of fire, turning dozens of the undead to ash. But for every fallen foe, 10 more took their place. His strikes were losing their precision, his movements slowing under the weight of battle. The Star-Child, glowing with an aura of celestial energy, had been a beacon of defiance. His power surged through the battlefield, cutting down enemy after enemy, but now even he was faltering. A dozen clawed hands grabbed at him, dragging him down into the sea of monsters. He let out a cry of rage, a pulse of light blasting them away, but it was clear this was a losing battle. Vincentius stood at the front of his horde, untouched, smirking as his brothers struggled. He tilted his head, eyes gleaming with amusement. "You put up a good fight," he said over the chaos, his voice smooth, almost mocking. "Truly you did, but in the end, you were never as good as you believed you were." He let out a soft chuckle, stepping back as the monstrous tide continued to press forward. "And now, it's time for me to go and take what is rightfully mine." With that, Vincentius turned away from the battlefield. The Star Child, gasping for breath, saw him moving toward the fortress, and realization struck like a blade to the chest. "You snake," he growled, trying to push forward, but another wave of creatures crashed into him, forcing him back. Janaeus roared in frustration, but he too was pinned beneath the unrelenting mass of the undead. Vincentius did not look back. The battle was over. His brothers would die here. And he would claim the Dark Throne for himself. Blackwell's laughter echoed through the darkened throne room, a sound so chilling it seemed to seep into the very walls, twisting the air with malice. He stood over Feric's motionless form, sneering down at his fallen brother before turning his gaze to Kaelion, his expression filled with contempt. "Feric, are you still with us?" Blackwell taunted, taking slow, deliberate steps toward the so-called champion. "This is the great hope of the Elder? The one Morpheus sent to kill me? This broken child? Let's see if he really has the power." With a flick of his wrist, a spear of dark light surged from his palm, striking Kaelion square in the chest. The force lifted him off his feet, hurling him back against the far wall with a sickening crack. The energy held him there, pinning him like an insect under glass. Kaelion gritted his teeth, straining, but the darkness pressed against him, crushing the air from his lungs. Bethara screamed, rage and desperation fueling her as she dove for her fallen sword. She snatched it up and sprinted toward Blackwell, her movements quick, reckless, but filled with fury. Her blade sliced through the air in a flurry of strikes, each one carrying the weight of her rage. Blackwell, however, was unfazed. He laughed at the sword striking him, having no effect, watching her with something almost like amusement. And then, in a single swift motion, he caught her by the throat. Bethara gasped, her feet leaving the ground as Blackwell lifted her effortlessly with one hand. At the same time, his other hand kept Kaelion pinned against the wall, the dark light searing into his chest. A slow smirk curled on Blackwell's lips. "Maybe I'll take your woman, champion." His voice was smooth, cruel. He tilted his head, studying Bethara's struggling form. "She has spirit. I'll break her. I will make her do my every bidding." Kaelion let out a roar of fury, struggling against the dark energy that bound him. But it was useless. He couldn't move. He couldn't save her. Feric, barely clinging to consciousness, could do nothing but watch, his body too weak to move. His breath came in ragged gasps, his vision blurred. Was this how it would end? Then the unmistakable sound of steel-piercing flesh. Blackwell's eyes widened in shock as two long swords drove through his back, emerging through his chest, black ichor dripping from their gleaming edges. His grip on Bethara's throat slackened. His dark light wavered. Kaelion and Bethara dropped to the ground. Bethara collapsed in a heap at Blackwell's feet, unmoving. Kaelion fell hard beside Feric, gasping, his body trembling from the attack. Behind Blackwell, Vincentius stood, gripping the hilts of the sword still buried in his brother's body, a wicked smile stretching across his face. Blackwell staggered forward, clutching at the blades protruding from him, his breath coming in sharp, shallow bursts. He turned his head, fury contorting his face. "Vincentius," Blackwell growled, his voice thick with pain and rage. "I knew I shouldn't have trusted you. That is the one thing you got right, brother." Vincentius sneered, wrenching the blades free. Black ichor sprayed across the floor as Blackwell fell to one knee. Vincentius stepped around him, rolling his shoulders as if shaking off the weight of an old burden. "This world will be mine. Unlike you, I won't destroy all of mankind simply to spite our fathers. No, 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 I will do the opposite." His eyes gleamed with dark ambition. "I will turn man against the elders. I will bend them to my will, make them my slaves." Blackwell let out a slow, dark chuckle, the sound sending a shiver down Kaelion's spine. "Do you think your sword could hurt me?" he hissed, rising to his feet. "I am not a mere physical being. I am the shadow. I am the absence of light. I am the dark light." With those words, a storm of raw energy erupted between them, dark tendrils of power lashing out in all directions. The entire tower shook violently as Blackwell and Vincentius hurled their full strength at one another, their dark powers colliding in an earth-shattering explosion. The walls cracked, pillars splintered. The entire fortress began to crumble. Chapter 45. The One True Oath. The battlefield was drenched in shadow, the air thick with the stench of death. The Star-Child and Janaeus, bruised and battered, knelt in the dirt, their bodies barely able to hold them upright. Their once mighty strength had waned, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The endless waves of creatures had overwhelmed them, and now the last remnants of the army of the dead circled like vultures, eager to claim the lives of the two fallen avatars. The Star-Child let out a weary chuckle, spitting blood onto the ground. "Well, brother, I must say, if I had to die, this is a pretty spectacular way to go." Janaeus smirked weakly, his golden eyes dimming. "Yes, but I had hoped to go out in a more dignified manner, maybe in a blaze of glory, not kneeling in a pile of rot." The creatures of the night advanced. A blackened sky loomed overhead, dark and eternal. It seemed this was how it would end. Two avatars, drained, exhausted, with nothing left to give. Then a piercing light tore through the heavens. A brilliant comet blazed across the sky, its radiance banishing the darkness for the first time in this cursed land. A streak of blue lightning cut through the blackness, descending toward them like a divine judgment. The ground trembled, the very air crackled with energy, and then impact. A shockwave of pure blue energy erupted from the comet's descent, engulfing the battlefield in a blinding pulse of celestial light. Every single one of the creatures of the night halted. They shrieked and writhed, their forms dissolving into shadow, erased from existence by the overwhelming power. The army of the dead disintegrated, their hollow eyes turning to ash as their wretched souls were released. The Star-Child shielded his eyes from the radiance, coughing as the energy pulsed around them. Janaeus, still reeling from the impact, stared in disbelief. His gaze locked onto the glowing figure standing amidst the destruction, emerging from the fading blue flames like a revenant from legend. His heart pounded. His mind raced. Then his eyes widened as recognition struck him. This was impossible. "Aseos!" Janaeus let out a hoarse, stunned cry. "Aseos, how?" The figure turned, his piercing silver blue eyes meeting his brother's. Aseos smirked. "I'll explain, brother. But first, let us finish this." Janaeus and the Star-Child barely had time to react before Aseos launched forward, a force of divine energy surging in his wake. His movements were flawless, effortless, graceful as the wind and powerful as the storm. The three brothers fought together, a sight unseen for eons. An avatar's power alone was formidable, but together, it was something beyond comprehension. The battlefield trembled beneath their combined might. Janaeus crumbled his enemies beneath his now massive dragon talons. The Star-Child called upon the power of the heavens, his strikes exploding like dying stars. And Aseos' blue, radiant energy finished the rest. Within moments, it was over. Silence. The battlefield was clear. The horrors were gone. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, they could breathe. The Star-Child collapsed onto a piece of broken stone, wiping the sweat from his brow. He glanced at Aseos, his expression still caught between relief and disbelief. "All right, you need to explain how this is possible." Janaeus crossed his arms. "We thought we lost you into the void forever." Aseos exhaled, his smirk never fading. "When my cloak trapped the Forgotten One in the void, it didn't just imprison him, it transported him to the edge of time and space itself, a place where no being could ever return from." Janaeus frowned. "Then how did you escape?" Aseos chuckled. "The Forgotten One was cast into oblivion, but I simply had to travel back." The Star-Child raised a brow. "You traveled back from the edge of time?" Aseos shrugged. "I am the avatar of Space Star-Child. Sorry it took me so long." Janaeus scoffed. "Long? You traveled from the very edge of time and space all the way here in just a few days?" Aseos grinned. "I must be getting slow in our old age." The three exchanged a look. Then they laughed. It had been a long time since they had stood together like this, since these three had fought side by side as they once had. But now wasn't the time to rest. Janaeus wiped a bit of blood from his brow, cracking his neck. "All right, brothers, enough nostalgia." The Star Child stood, stretching out his sore limbs. "Yes, there's still one fight left." Aseos turned toward the dark fortress in the distance, his expression darkening. "Let's go help the champion." The clash of titans sent tremors through the crumbling fortress. Blackwell, the embodiment of shadow, stood tall, his dark power cascading around him like a living void. Vincentius, once confident in his betrayal, now found himself overwhelmed. Blackwell's strength was far beyond anything he had imagined. The Dark Throne had never been his to claim. He had been a fool to think otherwise. Blackwell loomed over him, eyes burning with abyssal fury. "You sought to betray me, Vincentius? You of all people should know nothing hides from the shadow." A wave of pure darkness erupted from Blackwell's hands, enveloping Vincentius in an unrelenting storm of shadow. Pain shot through every fiber of his being. His own darkness paled in comparison to the abyss he had tried to command. His legs buckled, his strength failing. "Pathetic," Blackwell sneered, raising his hand to finish his wayward brother once and for all. But just as the final strike came, a golden light flared from Vincentius's ankh, blinding Blackwell. The radiance of it was like the sun piercing the night. Blackwell recoiled, his body flickering like a dying ember. Vincentius seized his chance. He gritted his teeth, forced himself up and disappeared into the shadows, vanishing from Blackwell's grasp. Blackwell's vision cleared just in time to see his brother slipping away into the darkness. He let out a roar of frustration, his voice shaking the walls of the fortress. "Run, coward. It will not save you." He seethed for a moment, then let out a slow, deliberate exhale. Vincentius was no longer his concern. He turned back toward the one who mattered. Kaelion. His gaze fell upon the young champion, still kneeling beside Feric, still broken. A wicked grin stretched across Blackwell's face. "Now, where were we?" Blackwell reached down, his clawed fingers wrapping around Bethara's throat once again. She gasped, struggling against his grip, her hands clawing at his wrist. "Ah, yes," Blackwell mused, his voice dripping with malice. "I was about to have my way with your woman." Kaelion's hands clenched into fists, his body trembling. "No," Kaelion whispered. "I can't win, Feric. I don't have the power." Feric, his voice barely more than a breath, forced his lips to move. "Remember what Morpheus told you. Believe in yourself." Kaelion looked down at his fallen brother. Feric had always believed in him. Even when he doubted himself, Feric had faith. Morpheus had faith. Bethara was still fighting, still struggling. He had to believe. Something inside him shifted. A whisper of something long dormant, something he had buried beneath fear. It was time. Kaelion rose to his feet, his breathing slowed, his doubt silenced. "Let her go." Blackwell turned, genuinely surprised, and he laughed. "Ah, finally you show some courage." With an amused flick of his wrist, he tossed Bethara aside like a discarded rag doll. She hit the floor, coughing, but still alive. Kaelion took a step forward. His eyes burned with a new light. "You know, I was so frightened. I almost ran away," Kaelion said, his voice steady, growing stronger with each word. "I didn't know that I could do anything I needed to." A faint golden glow began to flicker around his body. Blackwell frowned, his amusement fading. "What nonsense are you speaking? You are nothing." Kaelion didn't stop. The golden glow intensified. His feet lifted off the ground. Then I began to see. I just needed to believe in me. The glow erupted into a radiant white aura, enveloping Kaelion in a divine light. The power within him was awakening. Blackwell snarled, extending his arm. A massive blast of dark light surged toward Kaelion and did nothing. The darkness collided with the golden light surrounding Kaelion, but it could not pierce it. Kaelion floated higher, his body bathed in celestial energy. I believe in something more than you can understand. His eyes locked onto Blackwell's. A blast of white energy erupted from Kaelion's hand, striking Blackwell with immense force, sending him staggering backward. The avatar of Shadow took a step back. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Kaelion pressed forward. "Like the blade of a sword, I am forged in flame," he declared, his voice booming like a war drum. "Fiery hot, tempered steel. Fire bright to the night, I take." The golden light expanded, consuming everything. Blackwell's eyes widened in horror. "No, this cannot be." "I fear not," Kaelion roared. Blackwell lashed out, throwing every ounce of his darkness at Kaelion, but it was useless. Kaelion, now a beacon of pure radiance, stretched out his arms. The energy around him became unbearable, blinding, holy. Now compelled by something I cannot see, I go forth, surrendering to history. With a final unrelenting surge of light, Kaelion unleashed his full power. A wave of white fire erupted outward, engulfing Blackwell. Blackwell screamed, his form flickering violently, his darkness unraveling. The abyssal energy that had made him began to collapse upon itself, swallowed by the purity of Kaelion's radiance. "No!" Blackwell bellowed. Highest voice distorted, breaking apart. "This is impossible. I am the shadow. I am the dark light. I cannot be defeated." But the light did not relent. His form withered, disintegrated, consumed, until flash, Blackwell was gone. Silence fell over the battlefield. The darkness that had suffocated the fortress dissipated. The sky, once an endless black void, now showed the faintest hints of dawn. Kaelion, his body still glowing faintly, descended back to the ground. Bethara and Feric stared in awe, unable to speak. Kaelion, breathless, looked at his hands. He had done it. The champion had won. Chapter 46. The Champion's Choice. Kaelion stood in the center of the ruined throne room, his breath steadying as the last remnants of his golden light faded. The battle was over. The darkness had been vanquished. As the glow around him dimmed, the heavy silence in the room was broken by hurried footsteps. The other avatars rushed into the chamber, their weapons drawn, their eyes scanning the battlefield. The Star Child was the first to speak, his voice cautious but eager. "What happened?" A weak chuckle escaped Feric's lips as he lay on the stone floor. With effort, he turned his head toward them and, through labored breath, whispered, "We won." Bethara gasped, her hands covering her mouth as tears welled in her eyes. Then, without a second thought, she sprinted toward Kaelion. "Kay!" she cried, leaping into his arms. Kaelion caught her, holding her tightly against him as she buried her face in his neck, breathing him in. She was shaking. She pulled back just enough to look into his eyes, her voice filled with so much emotion it almost broke. "I love you. You did it." Kaelion smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I love you, Beth. We did it." Janius, arms crossed, gave a knowing smirk. "The boy really is the champion after all." Bethara then remembered that Feric was hurt. Bethara's heart clenched as she reached Feric's side, her breath catching in her throat. He looked awful, his eyes dim, his wounds deep, his breathing shallow. Blood stained his tattered clothes, and for a moment, fear gripped her. Was she too late? "No, hold on, Feric," she whispered, digging desperately into her pocket. Her fingers closed around the smooth surface of the fig of Anton, and without hesitation, she pressed it into his hand. "Eat this," she urged, her voice trembling. Feric, barely conscious, blinked at her before weakly lifting the fig to his lips. The moment he bit into it, a golden warmth spread through his body. His wounds sealed, color returned to his face, and his strength surged back like a roaring tide. He exhaled sharply, pushing himself up from the ground as if waking from a deep slumber. Iseo smirked, arms crossed as he watched. "Ah, the fig of Anton," he mused. "Be careful, Feric. That's powerful stuff. You'll feel like you're floating in the ozone." The avatars all laughed, the tension momentarily breaking. Feric rolled his shoulders, testing his newfound vigor, then grinned. "Welcome back, old friend," Feric said as Aseos helped him to his feet. Feric, testing his limbs, rolled his shoulders and exhaled deeply. Aseos nodded. "Good to be back." The four avatars stood together, side by side, a united force. But before the moment could settle, a shadow appeared in the doorway. A tall figure stepped forward, moving with a grace that seemed almost unnatural. Morpheus, the elder. Bethara's joyful expression turned to rage. She stepped forward, fists clenched. "You have a lot of nerve showing yourself here." Morpheus did not flinch. His ancient eyes held wisdom, patience. Bethara's voice cracked with anger. "Where were you? Where were the almighty elder when we needed you?" Morpheus let out a slow breath before answering, his voice steady. "That is not how this works, child. We cannot interfere. We are all bound by the same laws." Kaelion, still holding Bethara's hand, met Morpheus's gaze with something unexpected. "Forgiveness." He nodded once. "Thank you." Morpheus tilted his head. "You thank me?" Kaelion exhaled. "You believed in me all along. I just had to believe in myself." Morpheus smiled. "Yes, and because of that, it is now time for you to take your place amongst the elder." Under the order of the rose, a stunned silence followed. Then, "What?" almost all of them shouted at once. Morpheus remained unshaken. "Once the champion fulfills his quest, he ascends. It is written, and so it will be done." Kaelion's expression hardened. He stood taller, stronger. "Listen, Morpheus." His voice was steady, unwavering. "I did as you asked, as the elder asked. I defeated the shadow." He took a step forward. "But I will not join you." Morpheus's brow furrowed. "You would turn down immortality, wisdom beyond comprehension?" Kaelion shook his head. "I don't need it. I don't want it. My life is mine to live as I see fit." He looked at Bethara, at Feric, at his friends, his family. "I didn't need the order of the rose to fulfill the prophecy." His gaze sharpened. "All I needed were my friends, and to believe in myself." Just then a familiar flurry of wings echoed through the chamber. Zephi, his loyal companion, swooped down and landed gracefully on his shoulder. The white-feathered falcon let out a triumphant cry, as if echoing Kaelion's declaration of freedom. As the dust of battle settled and the echoes of war faded into the wind, Kaelion stood among his companions. The ones who had guided him, fought beside him, and shaped his destiny. The weight of victory sat heavy on his shoulders. But for the first time in what felt like eternity, he could breathe freely. He turned to the ones who had helped him reach this moment. His eyes landed first on Feric, his loyal friend, the new avatar of the woods. Kaelion clasped his shoulder firmly. "Feric, through every step of this journey you stood by me. You never wavered, never backed down. Pitiora left big shoes to fill, but I have no doubt you'll do even better." Feric smirked, shaking his head. "That's a lot of confidence in someone who barely made it out of this alive." Kaelion grinned. "It's not faith, my friend, it's truth." He then turned to Janaeus, the great dragon, avatar of fire. "Janaeus, without your might and your ferocity, this battle would not have been won. Your strength turned the tide when we needed it most." Janaeus let out a deep, rumbling chuckle. "Of course it did," he said, flicking his tail. "I'll send you my bill later." Feric laughed, shaking his head. "Same old Janaeus." Kaelion turned to Aseos, the avatar of space, his expression filled with gratitude. "Thank you, great celestial. You saved us all, not once, but twice on this odyssey." Aseos waved a hand dismissively, letting out a dramatic sigh. "Ack. Let's not get all sentimental now, boy. You're making me feel ancient. I've got plenty more solos left in me." Finally, Kaelion faced the one who had set him on this path for saint, the avatar of love. "And to you, Kaelion smirked, Stanley's. You were the first to guide me on this journey. The first to show me there was more to this world than I could see. For that, I thank you." The Starchild groaned, rubbing his temple. "It's Starchild." He sighed, then threw up his hands in surrender. "I give up. The group burst into laughter, the kind that comes only after surviving the impossible together. In that moment, with victory behind them and the future ahead, they were not just warriors or avatars or champions. They were friends. Kaelion smirked. Now, if you all don't mind, I'm going to find my Aunt Dell. He turned to Bethara, meeting her eyes with a warmth that sent shivers down her spine. Without another word, he wrapped an arm around her waist. Bethara gasped as the golden glow surrounded them both. Kaelion gave the elder one final look, a knowing smile on his lips. Good day. Then with a final surge of light, they vanished into the sky free. As the golden light disappeared into the sky, Morpheus watched in silence, a rare smile crossing his lips. With a quiet nod, he murmured to himself, "That boy truly has the light in his eyes. He is a true champion." Epilogue. 10 years had passed since the final battle that had altered the fate of the world, yet it felt as if time had only solidified the victory. In the newly named kingdom of Solara, the sun blazed ever brighter over the land. The kingdom had risen from the ashes of darkness, a beacon of hope reborn, and atop the throne of that kingdom sat Kaelion and Bethara, hand in hand, ruling justly with hearts full of love, wisdom, and courage. Their son, Eros, now 5 years old, filled the halls with laughter and joy. He was a bright child, with the same light in his eyes that his father had once carried, an unshakable belief in himself. But it wasn't just the child that made their kingdom thrive, it was the unity and strength of the family they had built together. In the grand throne room beside them stood their loyal friend and brother, Feric, ever steadfast and true. His place, though once uncertain, was now solidified. He had found his peace, knowing he had done his part, and now he could stand proudly as one of Solara's greatest protectors. Perched high above, on a stone mount, Zephi, the magnificent creature who had accompanied Kaelion from the very beginning, stood as if she too had claimed a royal seat. She was more than a companion, she was family. Aunt Dell, ever supportive and full of pride, sat quietly beside the throne. Her love for her nephew, Kaelion, had never wavered. And as she watched him now, reigning with his beloved wife, she knew that his true destiny had unfolded exactly as it should. The statues of the avatars, revered and immortalized, were proudly displayed throughout the throne room. Their faces, carved into the stone, were forever a reminder of the sacrifices made and the strength it took to shape the future. Later that night, as the kingdom settled into peaceful silence, Kaelion and Bethara tucked their young son, Eros, into bed. The child lay peacefully asleep, his dreams innocent, untouched by the horrors of the past. In the quiet of the night, Eros's body shifted beneath the covers. His small hands twitched, and his brows furrowed. He began to stir in his sleep, caught in the grip of a vision. A dream unlike any child should experience. The air around him thickened, as though the room was becoming suffocating, and darkness began to creep into the corners of the chamber. The faint glow of moonlight was swallowed by the gathering shadows. He was no longer in the safety of his room, but rather in an ancient place, an endless corridor. Eros's heart pounded in his chest as he ran through the stone halls. His footsteps echoed with urgency, but the shadows seemed to chase him, always there, always just out of sight. But he never stopped. He knew where he was going. Ahead, a massive ancient door. He reached for the large golden handle, but before he could touch it, a voice called out, "Will you sacrifice?" In every age, in every time, a hero is born. As if by some grand design, The Order of the Rose by Joey Cassata. The Order of the Rose, audiobook, written by Joey Cassata, published by Sata Entertainment, audiobook read by Morpheus, music by Ancient Door, front and back cover designed by Joey Cassata, logo by Jeff Trott, audiobook edited by Joey Cassata, book edited by Bill Deaver and Nige Savage. Copyright 2025 Sata Entertainment, all rights reserved. No part of this audiobook may be reproduced, stored, or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission from the copyright owner, except for brief excerpts in reviews or articles. A dream is not just a vision of what could be, but a whisper from destiny calling you to awaken.